Good morning, everyone. Mike's MMA Picks here with your Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown show for UFC Vegas 85, where we have a middleweight matchup at the top of the card. We've got Nassourdine-Imavov taking on Roman Dolidze. Now, we must mention a few things here. We've had a little bit of a break. We have 13 fights on the card. 9 out of the 13 bouts are currently favored to end inside the distance. I think we may have put ourselves in a few good spots here. And let's get things kicked off on this sunny fight morning Saturday. We are ready to go. Let's start with a morbidly obese heavyweight. Both of these fighters are morbidly obese heavyweights. We've got Thomas Petersen taking on Jamal-Pogues. And something to mention here, you look at the physique and stature of Jamal-Pogues, and he reminds me of a massive Kevin Holland gone wrong. 28 years of age, 6'3", I believe a 78-inch reach, originally burst onto the scene with his professional career debut at middleweight, and now comes in tipping the scales at the heavyweight limit. You have to wonder what has gone wrong behind the scenes throughout the years, almost eerily reminiscent of Jake Collier's transformation. And he's taking on Thomas Petersen, who you look at the Contender Series matchup and you see Thomas Petersen sitting at a minus 750 betting favorite in that bout and got the job done. But here we go. Look at how this line has closed. Thomas Petersen, who is going to have to rely on his grappling here. Otherwise, he will likely get picked apart by Jamal-Pogues, who is a bit fleet of foot despite the adipose tissue that has been flourishing throughout his body. Jamal-Pogues, I don't trust the cardio. I don't trust the willpower. The lack of discipline is a major issue, but one thing he does has, if he wants to stay at range and play a distance game where he's picking his opponent, Thomas Petersen, apart, if Petersen drains his gas tank, then Jamal-Pogues could potentially become live. This is a slobber knocker of a heavyweight matchup, but I'll be honest, this is a pretty disgusting fight. We got to be honest with ourselves here. Oh, my goodness gracious. I'm going to be picking Thomas Petersen here, but you have to wonder, the UFC could potentially have pit a number of other fighters on the roster against one another here. It pains me to pick Thomas Petersen. Jamal-Pogues, come on, man. Get back down to light heavyweight, and it's going to take maybe 6-8 months to do that. I think he would be better served fighting at light heavyweight instead of heavyweight action here. This is disgusting. Good morning, Professor Chaos. Good to see you. Ben, great to see you as well. Shady, thank you for tuning in this morning. Ready to rock and roll. Loner, let's go. Let's get this party started on this beautiful fight morning where we have a number of bouts to speak about. Let's continue and let's talk about that. Let's talk about a fight that could have potentially opened the card here. I would have much rather see this bout be the curtain jerker. We have Quinones taking on Markel Mederos. Markel Mederos, this fight takes place at lightweight. This is a bout where Landon Quinones is going to fight hard for your money. He took on Nasrat Haqparast and went the distance there. Came out pretty hot early and then faded, and that was a short notice matchup. And one of the things that you have to watch here when you do the tape study and you watch Markel Mederos fight, he is a very tactical fighter. He's a cerebral fighter. He's a fighter who doesn't necessarily waste a lot of energy. And Quinones wants a dogfight. He wants to get in a phone booth, mix it up, and see who comes out on top. Mederos could potentially look like he's shooting fish in a barrel early and often here. But one thing I have to mention, this fight does take place in the smaller octagon at the UFC Apex, and I think that could potentially be a difference maker here. I think that Mederos is going to come out, look pretty early, and he could potentially face some adversity inside of the octagon. We're going to see who comes out on top. Believe it or not, I like the overs in this matchup. I'm not typically a a handicapper who plays overs, but I think that is a potential for a play here. And I am leaning towards the underdog, Quinones, despite Mederos being the more fluid, more athletic, and more technical fighter. And also, he poses a number of threats in regards to potential paths to victory here. But I think that Quinones is going to force a dogfight here. You saw a very icy stare down. I think that also upped the ante here when these two young bucks lock horns inside the octagon. You look at Mederos, 27 years of age, so still coming together, has suffered one professional loss. So it's not like he has a aura of invincibility about him. I think that Quinones is going to force the action, make this a dirty fight. I think this will head to the scorecards, or at least get to a over 2.5. But we know that that there is the potential for a fighter to break inside of the octagon. But give me the over 2.5, and give me the underdog, Quinones there. Now we have Jujita Stoliarenko coming in as a minus 140 betting favorite, taking on Luana-Carolina. And you watch the tape here, you watch the weigh-ins. Luana-Carolina came in at 129 pounds. This is a fighter who, it looked like a strategic weight miss against Stoliarenko, who is going to look to grapple here, going to look for that armbar like she's done so many times before. I believe she has 10 submission victories, 10 or 11. It's incredible. Her wins, they typically come inside the distance. They typically come by armbar. And this is a young lady who has 7 professional losses. Originally, I went back and watched the tape, and you see Stoliarenko is typically armbar or bust, and she has the potential to get that done here. Luana-Carolina, large fighter. Both of these fighters, similar stature. Luana-Carolina is a little bit heavier in the lower portions of her body, around the hips. And Carolina, man, what's going on here? What's going on with the UFC? The first and third fight of this card, both of these bouts could have been banished and removed from the fight card. And we'd be better served with 11 bouts rather than 13, watching these two fighters take place. Now, you watch the fight footage, 9 and 4. You look at Luana-Carolina. She came in as a plus 185 underdog in her last bout against Petrovic, and she came out the other side victorious. You watch the fight against Molly McCann, and this is a fighter, Luana-Carolina, when things don't go right, when things don't go her way, she can fold up like a cheap tent. And I have concerns for both fighters here. I like the fight doesn't go the distance. That was sitting around minus 125 or so. But you also have to consider this is women's mixed martial arts. This is low-level women's mixed martial arts. You're at the mercy of the in-fight decision-making skills of each of these ladies. And I don't trust either fighter here. At least Stoliarenko, you can bank on her trying to go for an armbar. That's one thing that could potentially happen. Now, is that weight going to be an issue here? Is she going to be unable to solidify the takedown early and often? That's something that I have concerns about. But I will be picking Stoliarenko to win, and I think that she does get this done via submission. Take a look at that prop. Take a look at that line. And if you're able to get plus money on Stoliarenko inside the distance, I think that is the most likely outcome in this spot. But I also have to mention, too, you go back and watch the weigh-ins. Carolina was forced to lose an extra pound here. She got back down to 128. So that is an extra pound that has been drained off of Luana-Carolina. So potentially she could come in here with a bit of a strained gas tank here. So give me Stoliarenko via submission inside the distance. Now, we've got multiple comments here. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome aboard. Good morning, Liam. I appreciate your stick-to-itiveness. Good morning. Flea, welcome back. Let's go. So the Stoliarenko via submission prop is potentially in play. Now, let's talk a South Korean fighter in Jeong Young Lee, who has shown that he's going to come out here, fight to his strengths, solid striker, and he's taking on a bit of a grinder in Blake Bilder, who that fight against Kyle Nelson, man, what went wrong? What went wrong for Blake Bilder there? Blake Bilder was sitting at a minus 280 betting favorite against Kyle Nelson and came out the other side with a loss. Blake Bilder, 33 years of age. He's a fighter who has some warts in his game. I know 8-1-1 overall record, but I believe that's a bit deceiving here. I think we are in for a dogfight in this matchup. And you watch Jeong Young Lee fight, and he was tested. He was tested in his UFC debut. He was taking on a fighter who pushed him to the limit, and Young Lee came out the other side victorious. Bilder, if I'm Blake Bilder here, I'm going to push a frenetic pace and go for broke, because Jeong Young Lee, if he's able to find his way from a striking perspective, he could potentially put Bilder in a world of trouble here. He's a very slick, accurate fighter. Jeong Young Lee. I am picking Jeong Young Lee to win this matchup, and Blake Bilder's got to show me a little more. If you can't beat a rudimentary fighter in Kyle Nelson, I know Nelson throws hammers and he's tough as nails. He's a bit of a brick wall out there, but Bilder didn't have what it took in that matchup, and I don't necessarily trust him here. I'm going to be picking Jeong Young Lee to win, and I think that this fight has the potential to also end inside the distance. Fight doesn't go the distance, sitting at minus 150. I think that that Bilder's going to get cracked a few times here. Watch Jeong Young Lee come to work, and he gets right to it. There is not necessarily a feeling out process when he fights. He's going to go for it. And I think that's a recipe for this fight to end early. As you can see, the sun's shining. I've got the blinds closed, but the light is piercing through. Now, wow, look at this matchup, my brothers. We've got Themba Gorimbo taking on Pete Rodriguez. Pete Rodriguez sitting at plus 200, and he's taking on a Themba Gorimbo who we saw his matchup against AJ Fletcher. He can be outworked from a physical standpoint, can get out muscled, and he's taking on a Pete Rodriguez who, this guy is going to throw hammers out there. I know he fights out of the MMA lab. You watch the coaches in his corner telling him to wait for it, stay composed, and they yell knee, 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 and he blasts Mike Jackson out of the water. But I'd say 99% of the roster in the UFC takes out Mike Jackson. I still wonder, how the hell did Mike Jackson end up in a UFC octagon multiple times? It's incredible. And Pete Rodriguez, he is going to fight hard. He had Jack Della Maddalena respecting his power early, and he landed a couple of shots on Jack Della, and that's something that if he lands on Themba Gorimbo, I do not trust Themba Gorimbo. I know that he has the potential to invest, or he may have invested in The Rock's financial donations to his cause, which were that he was just struggling to make ends meet. And Themba Gorimbo, you watch the fight against Mazany. Go watch the fight against Mazany on the regional scene. This was a few years ago, but I believe that Gorimbo is very frail and that he could potentially be in a world of trouble here if Pete Rodriguez lands on him. The problem is we don't have much fight footage on Pete Rodriguez, and that is a double-edged sword. If you are one of Pete Rodriguez's opponents, you don't have much to work with when you're trying to break down the fighting style. You have something that you have to be concerned about, is the gas tank of Pete Rodriguez. That could potentially empty quickly. The get-up game of Pete Rodriguez, still a question mark. Gorimbo, yes, credentialed the better grappler here, but multiple face tattoos all across the face, the neck, the colored hair, the ability to throw caution to the wind for Pete Rodriguez. He said he felt like he pulled a rabbit out of his hat when he was trying to come out the other side victorious against Mike Jackson. He said he was listening to his coaches. They were at the controls there. And if he gets in there, Pete Rodriguez, this fight ends very, very quickly. If he's the one controlling his decision-making process. So I think that this fight is going to end under 2.5. I think that fight doesn't going the distance is probably going to hit, but I also think that if Pete Rodriguez fights a composed game plan, I don't believe he's necessarily capable of doing that. Then this fight gets very interesting for Gorimbo. But I'm going to be picking the underdog, Pete Rodriguez, here. I think that he's going to land one of his hammers on Gorimbo and put Gorimbo out. I know that's an underdog play. I don't trust Gorimbo. I'll say that. The AJ Fletcher look also, I mean, he was relying on AJ Fletcher making big mistakes inside the octagon. You can't necessarily do that. I have concerns that he's going to be unable to get out of the way of these strikes that are headed towards his dome. So give me Pete Rodriguez in that matchup as the underdog. Now, let's go. Good morning, sir. Moise, good morning. Yes, Lacoste, thanks to my wife for purchasing a few of the current wardrobe. We have Bilder was demonstrating cardio kickboxing. Yes. Welcome. You see Iron Mike, by the way, we've got an Iron Mike autographed boxing glove right behind me. JP took a half shot unit on Pete. Gorimbo is overrated, and his game is generic. I do agree with you there. Let's continue this journey, my brothers. Let's work our way through this card. So we've got this is a fascinating matchup here. Khizriev-Muradov coming in as a minus 245 betting favorite, and he's taking on Charles Johnson. And one of the things I posted and tweeted earlier this week was, actually I did it last card also before the Malcolm Gordon-Jimmy Flick matchup, was that some fighters just have a knack of losing. Some fighters have a knack of finding a way to win. And Charles Johnson is a fighter who has shown on multiple occasions that he finds a way to lose. And Khizriev-Muradov is a fighter who, when I watch the tape, it can be a bit deceiving because Khizriev-Muradov looks a bit frail when I watch him on the scales and I watch him compete. Watch the last few seconds of the third round when he was taking on Nam, and he puts on a wrestling display that shocks Dominic Cruz. Wow! And where was that? Why was he unable to get the takedowns against Tyson Nam? His shots were not working. But you take on Charles Johnson, and Charles Johnson has a very poor takedown defense. Even his first level of takedown defense is typically horrific. Charles Johnson is a fighter who's going to fight hard for your money, and the longer the fight goes, he could potentially come live here. Maxim, I do like his jab. Remember, I tweeted yesterday, the jab is the key to the door, as Mr. Michael Bisping says. Now, Khizriev-Muradov, I have concerns about his haircut. Also, when you have a haircut like that, we've seen it with many fighters throughout. Paddy Pimblett has had a haircut like that, where if you are getting popped, your hair's going to be flopping back. The optics are not ideal. I advise Khizriev-Muradov to shave his head moving forward. People who have a bowl haircut, not a smart move inside of the octagon. Charles Johnson, you, my friend, are going to have to fight for your life inside the octagon to come out the other side victorious, because you've dropped the ball many, 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 many times before. And the Zhalgas Zhumagulov matchup, you watch that fight, he got lucky to walk away victorious there. Khizriev-Muradov, yes, appears frail, but 126, 28 years of age, the arrow's pointed up. Do folks believe that Khizriev-Muradov is a fraud? Possibly. I think this is going to tell us a truth. I think that if you got in on Khizriev-Muradov early, It was a potentially solid play because you're fading a fighter who finds a way to lose. Charles Johnson finds a way to lose fights. It's the Ode Osborne fight. We've seen it many, many times before. Now, yes, Charles Johnson, he was within seconds of winning the previous matchup, but he got completely outworked on the mat. And I think that Maksum could potentially come out here and cause Charles Johnson fits on the mat. At what cost does that come, right? Does Azat Maksum drain his gas tank to a point where he's gassed out in the second and third round? I think that's a possibility, but I'm in the business of fading fighters who find a way to lose. And you've got a 27, 28-year-old fighter who, Khizriev fighter, who's going to come out here and he's 17-0. He's 17-0. I know that some of that record potentially is padded, but also the guy does find a way to win. So give me Azat Maksum in this spot. Now, like before we get to the Molly McCann fight, we have Shady saying fade Johnson, low volume for Azat at that price. Well, he does have a solid jab. Look out for that jab. Athlete, not a fighter. Yes, we know that Charles Johnson is, I believe he was in track and field in the lead up to his UFC career. Man, and everybody's talking about that haircut. Interesting stuff. Molly McCann taking on Urbina-Belbita. And when you watch this weigh-in, when you watch these two fighters square off, Molly McCann, the contrast in physique, in mannerisms, in gestures, there is the muscularity on Molly McCann is incredible. The way she has dropped weight classes and still managed to stay shredded. And look at her neck. Look at the way her neck, it is. There are veins. There's blood coursing through her muscular neck. It's very interesting to watch how a fighter at 33 years of age is finding her way in these spots, but not necessarily inside of the octagon. You watch her strut around after the victory over Luana-Carolina with the UFC belt. That was the most fraudulent moment in UFC history, as far as I'm concerned. You do see, yes, Sean, McCann wouldn't even face off with her. It's fascinating how that works. And McCann's coming in at minus 258. I'm rooting for Belbita here. I hope Belbita is able to drain the gas tank of McCann. McCann is going to come out like a bat out of hell here, trying to take Belbita out of there. And she's shared in, I believe, Instagram posts that she's going for an armbar here, that she's had dreams of submitting her opponent Belbita, and Belbita does have a wiry frame. She's not necessarily a power puncher, but here's what I'd love to see happen. I want to see McCann overcommit and Belbita come out the other side and either take the back or attempt to take advantage of Molly McCann's aggressiveness, because McCann's going to go for it. She's going to try to hunt for a bonus. She wants to get on that mic and make a statement. Man, I see folks. I think that the physicality of McCann is the real problem here. I think that there's a huge difference in the amount of testosterone that's flowing through either of these fighters' bodies. And I think that McCann is going to be the fighter who I'm going to pick here, but I want to see Belbita win this fight. I think that Belbita, she deserves to win a fight here. McCann shouldn't be in the UFC, and I'm going to be picking McCann, but man, the company wheels are turning. They want McCann to win this fight, and this is a rematch. So give me McCann here, but it pains me. It pains me to say that. Now, fascinating matchup. Urbina taking on Charlie-Radtke. Charlie-Radtke coming in as the plus 164 underdog. And something I posted a few weeks ago was the Gilbert Urbina matchup against Tresean Gore. I know it was short notice. I know that it was up a weight class, and Gilbert Urbina's physique has changed. He has a win over Orion Cussy, and the situation there was you had a Cussy brother who missed weight and who was drained in that matchup and was potentially looking for a way out of that fight. And Urbina came in and just torched him there. Tresean Gore, that matchup, it only took a couple of pops on the button for Tresean Gore, and they weren't necessarily kill shots that Gore was landing. They were dropping Urbina early and often. I don't necessarily trust Urbina's chin, but I do trust Urbina's gas tank. I think that he has the much better gas tank here against Charlie Radtke. Charlie Radtke is a fighter who's going to come out here and push a pace, and we know that left hook is coming early and often. He's a fighter who, if he's able to take Urbina down, I know he has a bit of a height and reach advantage here. You saw them square off at the face-offs, and yes, it was a few inches of reach and height Urbina does have here in this matchup. I think that this is a situation where a pace is going to be pushed, and I think that a finish is likely on the table for either fighter. I think that the -200 fight doesn't go the distance prop is in play because you have fighters who are going to risk losing. And that's a key here. When we talk about potential fight doesn't go the distance plays, you may have potential for fireworks, but you also have fighters who are not afraid to go for it. And fighters who don't fight the hands when submissions are being applied, that's a key here. You watch the Takashi Sato fight. I believe he fought, oh my gosh, was it Gunnar Nelson? There was a fight where he was just fighting the hands and trying not to be submitted. That was his sole game plan. He wasn't fighting to get out of the position. He was just preventing the choke so that he could live another day. I think that Urbina and Radtke are not going to necessarily fight the chokes. I think that there is potential for a knockout here. There is the potential for fighters gassing out completely here. And if fighters are gassing out, I think that Radtke is going to be the one that ends up gassing out. He struggled with Blood Diamond. He struggled taking Blood Diamond down. Urbina, he's not an upper echelon fighter at welterweight, but I think that he should be the favorite here. And I think that he gets it done inside the distance. I'll be picking Urbina to win, but I also realize that Urbina's chin is a liability, and Radtke, he's not afraid to go for it. So long-winded, but yes, I think that a finish is on the table in this matchup. And the key here is that both fighters are not afraid to be finished and go for a finish. So give me Urbina and inside the distance there. Now, we've got it says Luke says Urbina will be on that gelato after his dub. Yes, Alex Ramirez is taking notes. And JP says Belbita with the Smoke Show Award. Yes. You know, she puts the work in. She puts the work in inside and outside of the octagon. We could say that with conviction. Now let's talk Aliaskhab Khizriev taking on Mahmoud-Muradov. Mahmoud-Muradov has spent a lot of time in the octagon. We know exactly who he is. And Khizriev on the regional scene, we've seen a bit of a different physique, a different fighter, and Khizriev did leave a lot to be desired in his UFC debut. He wasn't able to find his way to the hips and even get single legs done. He wasn't able to commit. He did commit, but he wasn't able to execute his takedowns early. And Mahmoud-Muradov is a fighter who is fleet of foot. He's a fighter who is the much better striker here. And Khizriev is going to look to ground Muradov here. This is the people's main event in a lot of respects. Actually, this is the second people's main event. Dalby Marcano is definitely the people's main event. But this fight, I've seen on my timeline people all across the board here. And the key is, what does Khizriev's cardio look like the longer this fight goes if he's unable to put Muradov on his back and find the back of Muradov? Because yes, you are correct, JP, that Muradov has consistently lost money for bettors throughout the course of time. And the Barberena matchup, come on. Yes, Muradov did look massive. You are correct. The challenge here is what version of Khizriev are we getting? And I don't think we're going to exactly know until they step foot inside of the octagon, because I'll be honest, you look at these fighters, they are both in their mid 30s. They are fighters who have different strengths. I'd say Muradov is the much more well-rounded fighter, and Khizriev, he's built like Kelvin Gastelum. He even moves like Kelvin Gastelum inside of the octagon, but he's got his control game from a grappling perspective is something that a lot of fighters should seek after. And in this spot, it's interesting. I haven't completely written off Khizriev. I think that his last UFC fight was a bad look. He does look great on the scales here, but JP says he looked as good as he ever has on the scales. That is true. That is true. And the traps and the neck and the game plan here, I think that he's going to have to sell out for this, or he could potentially get finished the longer this fight goes. I'm actually going to be picking Khizriev here. I think that what we saw not only on the scales, but also the regional tape didn't necessarily lie to us. I think that his UFC debut was a situation where there were potential jitters, and that he came into that fight out of shape. And you see the transformation. I think there is a commitment to excellence here. I'm going to be picking Khizriev here, and I like the number. I'm hesitant to play it. I see a lot of folks on Muradov. I think that he has the ability to win this fight. Muradov does, if this fight plays out on the feet. But man, tough fight to call. And I don't blame folks for being on the Muradov side. I see what you see. I do not have a closed mind when I go into these fights. Now, let's talk Natalia Silva taking on Viviane Araujo. Viviane Araujo, I posted yesterday, Toledo Bernardo was a fighter who was taken out by Araujo, and that took place at bantamweight on short notice. And look at Araujo's physique in that matchup. My God, she's now 37 years of age. This is, I believe, 4 or 5 years later after her UFC debut. She's still in the game, and she still poses the exact same threats. She hasn't really evolved at all. Maybe the gas tank has gotten a little bit better, but Natalia Silva is a fighter who's going to stick and move. She loves to use her evasiveness. You saw it against Andrea Lee, and you've seen it against others. But Natalia Silva, she's not invincible, my friends. And I'm hesitant to play her at a number like this, minus 355 at the betting window. I believe that at this stage in the game, there's a little bit of value on Araujo here. This is a fighter who, her striking is beautiful. I like the way Araujo strikes. She was one of the last fighters to the scales, though. That needs to be mentioned. Extremely concerned about Araujo spending too much time cutting weight and not enough time recovering. Silva, she's pretty. She's a dangerous fighter. She's on the trajectory upwards. She is not a fighter who's going to have an aura of invincibility, because she has lost multiple times in the past. This is not an undefeated fighter. I think the arrows pointed up for Silva. I'm going to be picking Silva here, but I have not counted out Viviane Araujo. Araujo is extremely sturdy out there, and she's going to fight hard for your money. And this is it for her. At 37 years of age, she's coming to the end of her career, and I think that everything's on the line for her. Just like Charles Johnson's case, everything's on the line for Araujo here. I am interested. Very interested here. Sean says you don't think Vivi is live at all. Well, quickness might be the difference maker here. And the longer this fight goes, if Araujo, you get out of that first round, if Araujo starts to slow down even a little bit, I know the live number might be a little bit juiced, but you should see Silva run away with this fight the longer it goes. If this gets to the first minute, second minute of the second round, and you see Araujo slowing down, you may want to just hammer the live number. But let's see what that first round looks like. Now, this is an interesting matchup. Randy Brown taking on Moican-Dober. Salikhov coming in as the plus 215 underdog, and he's taking on Randy Brown, who left a lot to be desired in that Wellington-Turman fight, my friends. Watch back that fight, and you saw Wellington-Turman turn the gas on, turn up the pace, and you don't really expect that from Wellington-Turman. And he was able to, in the clinch, do some major damage with elbows. Randy Brown sitting at minus 265 here. That is a wide line, my friends. Moican-Dober, extremely dangerous early. Yes, 39 years of age, closing in on 40 years of age for Moican-Dober. Yes, he's coming off of a victory over Andre Fialho, and Moican-Dober is a fighter who is going to have to close distance. Watch the pre-fight interviews here. Watch the media day interviews. He said, I can't sit at range. If he fights me at range, at Randy Brown's kickboxing range, he's going to lose the fight. And I believe the other key issue here is that this fight was originally supposed to take place 7 weeks ago. Now it's taking place after a full camp and then adding an additional 7 weeks of training. Moican-Dober talked about being overtrained, but that's how life goes. I think that this fight ends inside the distance, my friends. I played 1 unit. Fight doesn't go the distance, plus 105. I'm surprised the fight doesn't go the distance is at a plus number. That's because Randy Brown typically comes in. He wasn't able to finish Trinaldo. He has gone the distance with many other fighters, Chaos Williams, I believe Jared Gooden. There have been others. But Moican-Dober has the potential to land the kill shot early. He also has the potential to fade late. I was at the Li Jingliang fight against Moican-Dober, and Salikhov showed that he was slowing down late in that fight. Granted, he did get the third round finish over Fialho there. So I have concerns about the gas tank of Salikhov. I have concerns about the fragility of Randy Brown. I think that a submission is live on the table for Randy Brown. I think that is a real possibility here. I'm going to be picking Randy Brown inside the distance. I think he gets this done late, but I think there's about a 30% chance that Moican-Dober, that he knocks, maybe, you know what? I'd say about 25%. I think there's a 25% chance that Moican-Dober knocks out Randy Brown. I think that you look at a fighter who was one of the last fighters to the scale as well, Randy Brown. He's a fighter who, this is inside the smaller octagon. These fighters have had multiple fight camps for this fight, and it's been extended. I think that someone's going to get floored here and finished, potentially choked out. I think that the plus 105 number holds some value, and at 1 unit, I like the number plus 105. Fight doesn't go the distance. I'll be picking Randy Brown. I do think that there's a potential for him to get a finish late, and I think that he could potentially get knocked out early. So give me fight doesn't go the distance there, and I'll be hesitantly picking Randy Brown. Now, you talk about a matchup with fireworks. Old man strength one more time. I pray for the Randy Brown brothers. Yeah, interesting. Only 2.3 DK points per minute. Yeah, Muslim is low volume. But the thing is, this is inside of the smaller octagon. I think that the pace is going to be pushed there. Now, Renato Moicano taking on Drew Dober. Fascinating matchup. Moicano coming in as the minus 192 betting favorite. I like the number when it was at minus 140. I think that was a solid play. And you think about the well-roundedness of Renato Moicano. You think about the submission threat of Renato Moicano. You think about the transitions once the fight hits the mat for Moicano. But the challenge is, how does he get this fight to the mat? He's going to have to be very intelligent. He's going to have to do his investigative work on the outside, find his way in. Dober plus 160. Dober likely, if he wins this fight, it's inside the distance. via knockout. He's shooting for that knockout record. And I think that the potential for Dober to put Moicano's lights out is there. But I also believe that Renato Moicano is like seasoned wine, man. He's like fine wine. He's getting better with age, and he's fighting to his strengths. He used to believe, and I tweeted this out, that Moicano believed if you beat him, you killed him. That was his mentality. He lost to Brian Ortega, and for almost a year, he said 6 months to a year, he was moping around, and he took that. It meant so much to him to walk away victorious, and for him to lose really, really hurt like hell. So he still has that mentality, but now it's more of a business to him. He's coming off of a year layoff where he had a knee injury and he had surgery. By the way, if you wouldn't mind submitting to the channel and also liking the video, that's a big help for us as we continue this journey, my brothers. Thank you so much. Moicano here, though, smaller octagon. He's the taller fighter. I believe that Moicano wins this fight more often than not, but I think this line is starting to get a little out of hand here at minus 190. The fight doesn't go the distance, is at minus 360 or so. So odds are this fight finishes. I think that Moicano, there's a live submission. The submission threat is extremely live here. The back taking ability is huge, and also the difference in the way Moicano scrambles on the mat and the way he transitions, it's like a warm knife through butter. Watch Moicano when it hits the mat. But I think that anytime this fight's on the feet, it's dangerous. You watch Rafael Fiziev, and you watch the other matchups. Dangerous game to play. But I like Moicano in this spot. I think that the fight doesn't go the distance. Take a look at the submission line here. Moicano via submission is potentially in play. Look at this. Dober KO is close to his money line play. And if that's the case, don't be greedy here, my brothers. If Rogan was, what are you saying here, Dylan? If Rogan was there, I'd hammer Moicano. Oh, yeah, you think he's going to be hunting for that post-fight victory speech? We'll see. He doesn't like fighting at the apex. But give me Moicano in that matchup. I think that Dober is live here. Now, let's talk main event of the evening. We've got Nassourdine-Imavov taking on Roman Dolidze. And look at this line. Imavov is now out to minus 180, Dolidze plus 150. I think that's a little bit disrespectful to Roman Dolidze, who's shown that he's been able to pull a rabbit out of his hat numerous times. You watch the Jack Hermanson fight and others. His threat on the map for a submission is serious. He is a big threat on the mat, and it only takes one submission attempt for him to pose a threat. Now, you watch the fights against Vettori and others, Trevor Giles. I have concerns for Dolidze's gas tank. I know that he's dropped weight classes. He's a fighter who is going to stay in the fight. And Imavov, watch the Phil Hawes fight, watch other fights, the Strickland fight. Imavov is going to use his footwork. Footwork is going to be huge here. It's going to be huge in the Randy Brown Moican-Dober fight, and it's going to be huge in this matchup. Imavov in a smaller octagon, he should be picking Dolidze apart early. I think that the live number is going to swell for Imavov, and Dolidze could potentially get up to plus 200, plus 300 at some points during this fight while Imavov is running away with the fight. And then there could be a potential clash of a misstep on Imavov's part. He may potentially take a deep breath and try to slow down his pace a little bit. And then I see Dolidze getting a hold of Imavov, dragging this fight to the mat and locking up a submission. I think that Dolidze is a live underdog here. He's tough as nails. He showed me a lot when he came back from a USADA suspension. He had to sit out for an entire year before his first UFC fight. And you've seen his physique change dramatically. He's more cut up. He's obviously taking this extremely seriously. Both of these fighters. Imavov does have the more vascular physique, and Imavov is working on his game also. Imavov, the younger fighter, very high ceiling for both of these fighters. But I think that this is going to come down to Dolidze at some point capitalizing on a mistake by Imavov. I do not know when it's going to happen. I think it may happen in the second or third round. Granted, these guys have 5 rounds to figure this out. That's 25 minutes inside the octagon. That's a long time in a smaller octagon for Imavov to stay evasive. I don't think he's going to want to lock horns and mess around on the mat with Dolidze. I think he's going to try to avoid the ground at all costs here. I know he's been effective. Imavov has been effective on the mat against Chris Curtis, etc., landing takedowns. But once you do that, you have to realize there's a realistic submission threat by Roman Dolidze here. And I like the Dolidze side. I think that the longer this fight goes, he becomes live here. I'm going to be picking Roman Dolidze to win this matchup. And I know he's an underdog and the line's swelling, so I'm watching this line. But Imavov, yes, if he fights a safe game plan, you're right, JP. It's going to take the threading of a needle. It's going to take Imavov. He's going to have to thread a needle and fight a perfect fight to win this fight. I think that Dolidze, tough as nails, I think that he's going to be there the longer this fight goes, and he's learning from his mistakes. So give me Roman Dolidze in this spot. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. By the way, thank you for tuning in. This is an extremely thorough breakdown that we just put together. We're at 46 minutes. So this is quite the breakdown. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Please take the time out of your day to subscribe to the channel. And also, if you enjoyed the content, leave a comment down below. Thank you, my brothers. Have a great rest of your day. Go get what's yours, and let's do this. Take care.